Hello everyone. The question given is n moles of a perfect gas undergoes a cyclic process ABCD as shown in the figure. Consists of the following processes. A to B is an isothermal expansion at a temperature T. So the volume is doubled from V2 is equals to 2V1 and pressure changes from P1 to P2. B to C is an isobaric compression at pressure P2 and initial volume is V1. And C to A is an isochoric change leading to change in pressure from P2 to P1. We can see this diagram here. We have to calculate the total work done in this cyclic process. Let us see step by step. First, let us calculate the work done in the process A to B. A to B is an isothermal process. For isothermal process, the work done is given as nRT ln V final by V initial. Here final volume is 2V1 and initial volume is V1. So the ratio will be 2V1 upon V1, which will be 2 ln 2. This will be the work done in the process AB. Now if you see the work done in process BC, BC is an isobaric process. For isobaric process we can write work done as pressure into final volume minus initial volume. Here pressure in the process is P2. Final volume is V1 and initial volume is 2V1. So this will be is equals to minus P2 into V1. Now if you consider this state B, here we can write the ideal gas equation, which is PV is equal to nRT. So we can write P2 into volume here is 2V1, which is V2 is equals to nR into temperature here is T. This isothermal process is going at a temperature T. So from here we can write P2V1 is equals to 1 by 2 into nRT. Just substitute the value here. So here we can say the work done in the process BC will be is equals to minus 1 by 2 nRT. Now coming to the last step, work done in the process C2A. C2A is an isochoric process. Work done in isochoric process will be 0 as volume will be remaining constant. So this will be 0. So if I want the net work done in the cycle, that will be equal to work done in the step AB, in the process BC, in the process CA. This is 0. So if you see these two values, we can take nRT common from this. So I am taking nRT common here into the remaining term there is ln2 and here it is minus 1 by 2. So option D will be the correct choice for the given question. Thank you. The question given is the focal length f is related to the center of curvature r of a spherical convex mirror by. We know that focal length will be half of the center of curvature. So this will be f is equals to r by 2 magnitude wise. Let us check about the sign plus or minus. Let us assume this is our convex mirror and this is the principal axis of the convex mirror. This is the pole of the mirror. Here is our focus and here is our center of curvature. This distance is given as r. So the distance between the pole and the focus will be half of that, r by 2. Now let us consider one more axis here. Generally the light rays will be falling in this direction. The direction of the light rays is considered as positive x-axis. So this axis will be positive x-axis and this axis will be positive y-axis. Here both the focus and center of curvature of a convex mirror will lie on the positive side of the x-axis. So the sign of the focus has to be positive. So here we have to consider focal length as plus r by 2. So if you check the options, option A will be the correct choice for the given question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, in Young's double slit experiment, width of one of the slit is 3 times the other slit. The amplitude of the light coming from a slit is proportional to the width of the slit. Find the ratio of maximum and minimum intensity in the interference pattern. We already know the formula for the ratio of maximum intensity and minimum intensity. That is, I max by I minimum will be is equals to. You can either write it in terms of intensities or in terms of amplitude. I am going for amplitude here, which will be A1 plus A2 upon A1 minus A2 whole square. Width of one of the slit is thrice the other. Let us take the slits as S1 and S2. If I assume width of the first slit as W, width of the second slit will become 3W. If the amplitude of the light wave coming from the first slit, which is A1, is equals to A, then as amplitude is directly proportional to width, width is becoming triple, so amplitude will also become triple. So A2 will be 3A. Now let us just substitute the values here. So A1 plus A2. A1 plus A2 will be 4A upon A1 minus A2 will be minus 2A whole square. This will be minus 2 times minus 2 square. This will be 4. So maximum to minimum intensity will be in the ratio of 4:1. So option C will be the correct option to the given question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is two stars of mass m and 2m are at a distance d. Rotate about their common center of mass in free space. The period of revolution is. So let us assume this is the star of mass m and this is the star of mass 2m. The distance between these two stars is given as capital D. First, let us locate the center of mass of this system. Let us take this first star as origin. Then the coordinates of the second star will become d, 0. So y coordinate will be 0 here. So if we calculate the x coordinate of the center of mass, this will be m1 x1 plus m2 x2 upon m1 plus m2, which will be 3m. So this m will get cancelled out, so this will be equal to 2d by 3. So center of mass will be lying near to the 2m mass, which is at a distance of 2d by 3 from the origin. So this distance is 2d by 3. So this distance will become d by 3. Now let us consider any one of the stars. I am going to consider this star of mass 2m. The gravitational attraction between these two stars will be the responsible force for the circular motion of these stars. So here I can write the gravitational force, which will be g into m1 m2, that is m into 2m upon r square, which will be d square, will provide us the required centrifugal force for the rotation. Here the radius of rotation of 2m will be d by 3 and radius of rotation of m will be 2d by 3. As we are talking about 2m, here the radius has to be d by 3. So this will be equal to mv square by r, or we can take it as mr omega square. So I am considering it as mr omega square. Mass is here 2m into radius is d by 3 into omega square. So here 2m will get cancelled out. So we can write omega square is equals to, bring 3 this side, this will be equal to 3gm upon d cube. So if I take square root on both sides, omega will be is equal to square root of 3gm upon d cube. We want the time period. Time period can be written as 2 pi by omega. T will be equal to 2 pi upon omega. So this will be is equals to 2 pi into cube root of d cube upon 3gm. So if we cross check the options, option B will be the correct choice, 2 pi into root of d cube upon 3gm. So option B will be the correct option for the given question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, a current through a wire depends on time as I is equals to alpha naught into t plus beta t square. Alpha is 20 amperes per second and beta is 8 ampere per second square. Find the charge crossing through the cross section in 15 seconds. So we all know that current is defined as rate of flow of charge dq by dt, And expression for current according to the question is alpha naught into T plus beta T square. Just bring this dt to the right hand side. So we can write dq is equals to alpha naught into T plus beta T square into dt. Now integrate this in the first 15 seconds. So T will be varying from 0 to 15. Integral dq will be the total charge flowing through this system. This will be is equals to alpha naught. I am directly substituting the value here. 20 into T square by 2 plus beta. Beta is 8. 8 into T cube by 3. This is in the form of x power n. X power n will be x power n plus 1 upon n plus 1. So here the lower limit is 0 and upper limit is 15. So here we can write q will be is equals to, you can cancel out this here, 10. 10 into upper limit 15 square minus lower limit 0 square. So that will be 15 square, which will be 225, plus 8 by 3 into 15 cube minus 0 cube. So that will be 15 cube, which is 3375. We can cancel out with 3 here. This will be 1125. So this total will be equal to 11250. So if you check the options, option B will be the correct option in the given question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, the moment of inertia of 4 bodies having same mass and same radius are reported here. I1 is moment of inertia of a thin circular ring about its diameter. I2 is moment of inertia of a circular disc about an axis perpendicular to the disc and going through its center. I3 is moment of inertia of solid cylinder about its axis. I4 is moment of inertia of solid sphere about its diameter. So if we take a ring about its natural axis, the moment of inertia is given as mr square. Now we are talking about a diameter. About a diameter, we know that moment of inertia will be half of that. You can use perpendicular axis theorem. This is also in diameter. If this is I1, this is also equal to I1. So 2I1 will be is equal to I. So I1 will be is equal to I by 2. So about a diameter, the moment of inertia will be mr square by 2. So I1 will be mr square by 2. Next I2. Disc about an axis perpendicular to it. So if you take a disc about an axis and perpendicular to it, means its natural axis. About its natural axis, the moment of inertia of a disc is equal to mr square by 2. We can already see I1 and I2 are equal here. Let us see about I3. Solid cylinder about its axis. Solid cylinder will be similar to a disc about its axis. So again I3 will be is equals to mr square by 2. So again here I1, I2 and I3 are equal to each other. Now let us see about I4. I4 is about a solid sphere about its diameter. Means about any natural axis here. All are diameters for a solid sphere. So the moment of inertia of solid sphere about natural axis is given as 2 by 5 mr square. So this is 0.4. And coming to this is 0.5, 0.5 and 0.5. So we can say that I1, I2 and I3 are equal to each other. 0.5 mr square and this is 0.4 mr square. So this will be greater than I4. So if you cross check the options, option C will be the correct option to the given question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, given below are two statements. Statement 1 is, if two photons have same linear momentum, then they will have equal wavelengths. The statement 2 is, if the wavelength of photon is decreased, the momentum and energy of the photon will also decrease. Now let us check each statement. To see the validity of statement 1, I am going to use de Broglie's equation. De Broglie equation is the linear momentum of any particle will be given as Planck's constant divided by wavelength h by lambda. Now it is given that two photons having same linear momentum will have same wavelength. Momentum is same. H is an universal constant. So if momentum is same, we can say that wavelengths will be same. So statement 1 is a true statement. Now let us see about statement 2. Wavelength is decreased, then momentum and energy of photon will decrease. If lambda is known, then energy of photon can be written as hc by lambda. And according to de Broglie's wavelength, linear momentum can be written as h by lambda. If lambda is decreasing, lambda is in denominator, and if it is decreasing, the p value, linear momentum value will increase. Similarly, lambda is decreasing, which is in a denominator, E value will be increasing. Here it is given as decreasing. So statement 2 is a false statement. Now check the options. Statement 1 and statement 2 are true, wrong. Statement 1 is false, wrong. Both are false, wrong. Statement 1 is true and statement 2 is false. So option D will be the correct option for the given question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, in the given figure, a mass m is attached to a horizontal spring which is fixed on one end to a rigid support. The spring constant of the spring is given as k. The mass oscillates on a frictionless surface with a time period t and amplitude a. When the mass is in equilibrium position as shown in the figure, another mass of small m is gently fixed on it. The new amplitude of oscillation will be. So here initially only block capital M is there. Now we have added this block small m. What will be the final amplitude? We all know that the angular frequency of a spring block system is given as root k by m. So here initially the angular frequency can be written as root k by capital M. Finally, the spring constant is going to remain same, but the mass of the system is going to become capital M plus small m. So this will be root k by capital M plus small m. When it is in equilibrium position, the velocity of the block, velocity at equilibrium position will be is equals to a into omega, maximum acceleration. So if I write the initial velocity will be is equals to a into omega 1. Similarly, let us assume the final amplitude as a2. So the final velocity means just after keeping the block, the velocity of the block will be is equals to a2 into omega 2. Now when we are placing this block, there will be no external force acting in the horizontal direction. If there is no external force acting in the horizontal direction, we can conserve the linear momentum along the horizontal direction. So if we conserve the linear momentum along the horizontal direction, initial angular momentum, which is m into va, will be equal to the final angular momentum. Final mass is m plus m into velocity vf. Now just substitute the values here. M into va. Va is a into omega 1. Omega 1 is nothing but root k by m is equals to m plus m into vf. Vf is a2 into omega 2. Omega 2 is root of k by capital M plus small m. Now this root k will get cancelled out. This root m will cancel this root m times. Similarly, root m plus m will cancel out this m plus m as root m plus m, capital M plus small m. So here we can bring this term to the left hand side. If I make a2 as subject, we can write a2 will be is equals to a into root of capital M by capital M plus small m. So if we cross check the options, option B will be the correct option for the given question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, if y, k and eta are the values of Young's modulus, bulk modulus and the modulus of rigidity of a material respectively, Then choose the correct relation of these parameters. We have to find the relation between these three parameters. Let us assume sigma is the Poisson's ratio of this material. We have two relations that are Young's modulus will be is equals to 3k into 1 minus 2 sigma in terms of yk and sigma, and the other relation is y is equals to 2 eta into 1 plus sigma, a relation between y, eta and sigma. Now we have to solve these two equations. Basically make sigma as function in both these two equations. So here sigma will be is equals to half into 1 minus y by 3k. Bring this 3k this side and y by 3k this side. So this can be written as half into 1 minus y by 3k. Similarly here sigma can be written as y by 2 eta 1 minus y by 2 eta. So this will be y by 2 eta minus 1. Now just solve this 2. So from here we can write y by 3k will be is equals to 3 minus y by n. So here eta y upon 3k will be is equals to, take the LCM here and eta this side, eta y by 3k will be is equals to 3 eta minus y. Now make k as subject. So from here we can write k is equals to, and eta y will be same upon 3 times 3 eta minus y, that will be 9 eta minus 3y. Now check the options. Option D will be the correct option for this question. These relations you can see from the NCERT also. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, in the given figure, the energy levels of hydrogen atom has been shown along with some transition marks A, B, C, D and E. The transition A, B, C respectively are. If you see A is from infinity to 1. If it is de-exciting to 1, it should belong to Lyman series, and as it is from infinity to 1, this has to be the series limit. So A will be the series limit of Lyman series. Now consider B. B is a transition from n is equal to 5 to n is equals to 2. N is equals to 2, so it has to belong to Balmer series. N is equals to 3 to 2 will be first line, 4 to 2 will be second line, 5 to 2 will be the third line. So this will be the third line of Balmer series. Now coming to C. C is a transition from 5 to 3. 5 to 3, so it has to belongs to Paschen series. Now 4 to 3 will be the first line, 5 to 3 will be the second line. So this has to be the second line of Paschen series. Now see the options. Ionization potential wrong, first line wrong, series limit of Lyman correct, third line of Balmer correct, and the second line of Paschen correct. So option C will be the correct option for the given question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, 4 identical particles of mass 1 gram made to move along the circumference of a circle of radius 1 meter under the action of mutual gravitational force. The speed of each particle will be. Different options are given. So first let us draw the given situation here. There are 4 identical particles which are moving in a circle. So they will be distributed in this manner symmetrically. And radius of this circle is given as r. So let me make this as the center O. This distance is given as r. This distance is given as r. Let us mark this as particle 1, this as particle 2, this as particle 3 and this as particle 4. Now if I want the distance between particle 1 and 3, r13, that will be the diameter distance 2r. Now if you see, the distance between 1 and 2 and 1 and 4 will be equal, symmetrical situations. And how much that will be? R12 and R14. If you consider this triangle, this is an right angle triangle. Two sides are R, then hypotenuse will be root 2R. You can simply use Pythagoras theorem. So R12 and R14 both are equal to root 2R. Now, when particles are moving in circular motion, there should be some centripetal force which will be reason for the circular motion. And in this case, the mutual gravitational force is going to provide the required centripetal force. The mutual gravitational force is going to provide the required centripetal force. So let us calculate how much gravitational force is going to act in this radial direction. If you consider the force between 1 and 3, that will be along the radial direction, along the particle line of action, between line joining the centers of the particles. So F13 will be is equals to G m1 m2. Mass of both particles is 1. So G m1 m2 will be 1 into 1, 1 square, upon distance. Distance is 2r here. 2r square will be 4r square. Again r is 1. So directly I am writing it as 4. Next, let us calculate the force acting between F12. F12 will be along this line, along the line joining the particles. So F12 will be G m1 m2, again 1 into 1, divided by root 2r whole square. Root 2r whole square will be 2r square. R is again 1, so I am directly writing it as 2. We have a similar situation with particles 1 and 4, so this will be also equal to F12. And this will be acting along these two directions. F12 will be in this direction, F14 will be in this direction. We want the forces acting in the radial direction, in this direction. So here we have to calculate the components. This is 45 degrees and this is also equal to 45 degrees. So if you calculate the net radial force acting on particle 1, this will be F13 plus, what will be the component of F12 along this direction? F12 cos 45. Similarly, this will have a component F14 cos 45. So the total force will be F13 plus F12 cos 45 plus F14 cos 45. And we know that this radial force is nothing but our centripetal force, which will be equal to mv square by r. M is 1, v square divided by r is also equal to 1. Now just substitute the value here. F13 we have already calculated, that is G by 4, plus F12 and F14 are same, as well as cos 45 is also same. So I am writing it as 2 times of F12 is G by 2 into cos 45, that is 1 upon root 2. So this 2 will get cancelled out and this will be equal to v square. Now take square root on both sides. We will get v is equals to square root of G by 4 plus G by root 2. We don't have any sort of options in this manner. So what I am going to do is, I am going to multiply this second term with 2 root 2 and divide this with 2 root 2. Why we are doing so? So that the denominator will become 4. 2 root 2 into root 2 will be 4. So I can take G by 4 common from these two terms now. This is G by 4 and this again this is G by 4. So this will be square root of G by 4 into, what will be remaining here? First term will be 1 and second term will be 2 root 2. Now check for the given options. G by 4 into 1 plus 2 root 2. Option D will be the correct option for the given question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, the velocity time graph has the shape A and B. What would be the corresponding acceleration time graph? So the main point which we are going to use here is the slope of velocity versus time graph. Velocity versus time graph will give us acceleration. The slope of velocity versus time graph will give us acceleration. So here the path traveled, the velocity versus time graph is along A and B. Now let us see only up to A to M. A to M, the velocity versus time graph is a straight line. For straight line, slope will remain constant. means acceleration from A to M will remain constant. And what about the slope, whether it is positive or negative? Here the angle made with positive x-axis is obtuse. If the angle made with positive x-axis is obtuse, then we can say the slope will be negative, as slope is nothing but tan theta, where theta is the angle made with positive x-axis. So here from A to M, acceleration will remain constant and also negative value. Now let us check between these 2 points, A to M to B. M to B, again a straight line, means slope will remain constant, which implies acceleration will remain constant. What about slope here? It is making an acute angle with the x-axis. If angle is acute, then tan theta will be positive, which implies slope will be positive. So acceleration will be positive here. A to M, constant and negative acceleration. M to B, constant and positive acceleration. So it has to be option B. This has to be point A, point M, point B. A to M, constant and negative. M to B, positive and constant. So option B will be the correct option for the given question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, two equal capacitors are first connected in series and then in parallel. The ratio of the equivalent capacitance in the two cases will be. So here we are given with two equal capacitors. Let us assume capacitance of each capacitor is C. So initially they are connected in series connection, then they are connected in parallel connection. We know that when two capacitors C1, C2 are in series connection, then C equivalent, 1 upon C equivalent will be equal to 1 by C1 plus 1 by C2. Here C1 and C2 both are equal to C. So 1 by C plus 1 by C, that will be 2 by C. So here C equivalent in first case, let us take this as first case, will be is equal to C by 2. Similarly, when they are in parallel, if C1, C2 are in parallel, then equivalent capacitance will be is equal to C1 plus C2. Here again both are equal, so this will be equal to 2C. Now they are asking about this ratio, C equivalent in series to the C equivalent in parallel. So this will be C by 2 upon 2C. C will get cancelled, so this will be 1 upon 4. So option C will be the correct option for the given question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, if an emitter current is changed by 4 milliampere, the collector current changes by 3.5 milliampere. What is the value of beta? So what is beta? Beta in AC circuits is change in collector current to the change in base current. But here we don't know anything about base current. We are given only about the change in emitter current and change in collector current. So here I am going to take a general relation in transistors, which is collector current will be equal to base current plus collector current. So if we take the changes, change in emitter current should be equal to change in base current plus change in collector current. We know two of the values here, substitute them. Change in emitter current is given as 4 milliampere, and we have to calculate here the change in base current, and collector current is given as 3.5 milliampere. So base current will be 4 minus 3.5, which will be 0.5 milliampere. So here change in base current will be equal to 0.5 milliampere. Now just substitute the values here in the formula of beta. Change in collector current, which is 3.5 milliamperes, divided by change in base current, which we have just calculated here, which is 0.5 milliampere. 3.5 upon 0.5, that will be 3.5 into 2, which will be equal to 7. So if you cross check the options, option A will be the correct option for the given question. Thank you. Hello everyone, here we are given with a matching, and that too a pretty basic one. These are just definitions of the different thermodynamic process or polytropic process we have. So let us see one by one. A is given as isothermal process. Isothermal process is something in which temperature will remain constant. So for A we can take option 2 as correct. Isochoric. Isochoric means a process in which volume will remain constant. So for B we can take 3 as the correct one, correct match. Adiabatic process is a process in which heat content will remain constant, or there will be no heat exchange between the system and the surroundings. So here C will be matching with 4. Isobaric. Isobaric is a process in which pressure will remain constant. So for D, 1 will be the perfect match. This will be the solution for this question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, each side of a box is made of metal sheet in cubic sheet is A. Means simply side of the cube is given as A at room temperature T. The coefficient of linear expansion of the metal is alpha. The metal sheet is heated uniformly by a small temperature delta T so that its final temperature will be T plus dt. Calculate the increase in the volume of metal box. We know that change in volume of any body due to thermal expansion is given as V gamma into delta T. Here V will be its initial volume, gamma is coefficient of volumetric expansion, and delta T will be the change in temperature. So initial volume side of the cube is given as A, means initial volume will be A cube. Here we are given with linear coefficient of expansion alpha, and here we have to use gamma. The relation which we all know, gamma will be is equals to 3 alpha. So this will be into 3 alpha. Delta T is directly given as delta T. So this will be is equals to 3 A cube alpha into delta T. Now check the options. 3 A cube alpha into delta T. Option A will be the correct option for the given question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, the cell E1 of EMF 6 volt and internal resistance 2 ohm is connected to another cell E2 of EMF 4 volts and internal resistance 8 ohm. The potential difference between the point X and Y is. So here if you observe the diagram, negative terminal of E1 is connected to negative terminal of E2. So they will oppose each other. So if I want the net EMF applied in the circuit, that will be higher minus lower, 6 minus 4, which will be 2 volts. If I want to calculate the current in the circuit, that will be effective EMF applied by R equivalent. Effective EMF, as we have just seen, that will be 6 minus 4, 2 volts divided by R equivalent. Here this 2 ohms and 8 ohms will be in series with each other. So as they are series with each other, effective will be 2 plus 8. 2 plus 8 will be 10. So 2 by 10, that will be 1 by 5, or we can write it as 0.2 amperes. 0.2 amperes of current will be flowing. And out of E1 and E2, E1 will be dominating E2. So current will be coming out of the positive terminal of E1 and again ending at the negative terminal of E1. Now we want just the potential difference between these 2 points. Let me enlarge this part. This is X, this is E2. I am separately representing the internal resistance of E2. This is internal resistance of E2. Just for representation we are taking it outside. And this is point Y. Current is moving in anti-clockwise direction in this circuit. So current will be flowing in this direction. How much current is flowing? 0.2 amperes. This EMF is 4 volt and this internal resistance is 8 ohm. Now let us apply voltage analysis from X to Y. So I am starting from X. So here this will be Vx. After this we are going to cross a battery and we are moving from negative terminal to positive. So potential will be increasing again plus 4. Again we are moving opposite to the direction of current. Opposite to the direction of current, potential will be increasing. So plus IR, I is here 0.2 and resistance is 8. After that we are reaching point Y. So this will be is equals to Vy. So Vx plus 4 plus this will be 1.6. 4 plus 1.6 will be 5.6 is equals to Vy. So the potential difference between point X and point Y will be is equals to minus 5.6 volts. We are talking only about the absolute terms here. We want just the magnitude here. So this will be magnitude of this, which will be 5.6 volts. So option C will be the correct option for the given question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, a cube of side A has a point charge plus q located at each of its vertices except at the origin where the charge is minus q. The electric field at the center of the cube is. So here at 7 vertices we are having plus q charge, and at the origin we are having minus q charge. So here I am going to use superposition principle. Instead of the given cube, I am going to consider it as combination of two identical cubes. In the first cube, as I have already pre-drawn here, each vertex is having a charge plus q. Each vertex is having a charge plus q. Now if you compare it with the original cube which is given to us, at 7 vertex we are having plus q, at 7 vertex we are having plus q. The only difference is at the origin. In the actual case, it is given as minus q, and here I am considering it as plus q. Means how much charge I have added to the system? 2q. Minus q plus 2q will become plus q. So in the second cube, I am going to take at the origin there is a charge of minus 2q. Now if you combine these two cubes, that will be equal to the original case which we have given. Now we have to calculate the electric field at the center. Now consider two charges, diagonally opposite charges, plus q and this charge plus q. Electric field produced by plus q will be in this direction. Electric field produced by this diagonally opposite charge will be having same magnitude, exact magnitude, and opposite in direction, means these two will get cancelled out. Similarly, electric field produced by this charge and this charge will get cancelled out. Electric field produced by this charge and this charge will get cancelled out. Means due to symmetry, the whole system is going to produce zero electric field at its center. Now consider the second cube. There is one charge, so it is going to produce some electric field. This is a negative charge, so electric field will be pointed towards the origin. So what will be the distance between origin and the center of the cube? Center of the cube will be at a by 2 comma a by 2 comma a by 2. So the vector which is joining the center of the cube and origin will be minus a by 2 into I cap plus j cap plus k cap. Here instead of I cap it is given as x cap plus y cap plus z cap. We want only the unit vector along this direction. Unit vector will be vector divided by its magnitude. Its magnitude, as we already know, half of the diagonal length, root 3 a by 2. So here a by 2 will get cancelled out. So this will be equal to x cap plus y cap plus z cap minus divided by root 3. Now the electric field produced by a charge is given as kq upon r square. K is here 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into r square. R is here root 3 a by 2. So kq, q is 2q. I am just taking the magnitude here as negative sign is already included in this direction. 2q upon r square. R square will be root 3 a by 2 whole square into the direction unit vector, which is minus x cap plus y cap plus z cap divided by root 3. So here this 2 square and 4 will get cancelled out. So in the numerator it will be minus 2q into x cap plus y cap plus z cap divided by, this will be root 3 square into a square, that will be 3a square into root 3, which will be 3 root 3 a square. Pi epsilon naught will be there. Pi into epsilon naught. Now compare it with the given options. Option B will be the correct option to the given question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, consider two satellites S1 and S2 with period of revolutions 1 hour and 8 hours, respectively revolving around a planet in circular orbits. The ratio of angular velocities of the satellites is. We know that the time period t can be written as 2 pi upon omega. Means time period and angular velocity will be inversely proportional to each other. If they are inversely proportional to each other, then we can write T1 by T2 will be is equals to omega 2 upon omega 1. What is T1 given? 1 hour and T2 is 8 hours. So this will be 1 upon 8. So if we want the reverse, which is omega 1 upon omega 2, this will be is equals to 8 upon 1. So option A will be the correct option for the given question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, the work done by a gas molecule in an isolated system is given by W is equals to alpha beta square into e power minus x square upon alpha kt, where x is the displacement, k is the Boltzmann constant, t is temperature, alpha beta are some constants. Find the dimensions of beta. So here the first thing which I am going to use is power of any number. Power of any number has to be dimensionless. So from that point I can say dimension of x square should be equal to dimension of alpha into dimension of kt. Why I am writing it combinedly, I will explain it. If you remember kTg, the kinetic energy of an gas molecule, monoatomic gas molecule, or any translational kinetic energy can be taken as 3 by 2 kt. So 3 by 2 kt is equals to E. This is a constant. So I can say dimensions of kt will be equal to dimensions of energy, which is ml square t power minus 2. I will directly use it here. Dimension of kt will be equal to ml square t power minus 2. L is displacement, so dimension will be L square. So L square will be is equal to dimension of alpha into dimension of kt, which is ml square t power minus 2. So from this we can write dimensions of alpha will be is equals to m power minus 1 L square into L power minus 2, that will get cancel out, L0, t power minus 2 coming this side, this will be t power 2. So this is the dimension of alpha. So this is a dimensionless quantity in a whole. Now from the given equations I can say dimensions of W will be equal to dimension of alpha into dimension of beta square. So let me write it down here. Dimension of work will be equal to dimension of alpha into dimension of beta square. I want dimension of beta, so I can directly write it down. Dimension of beta will be is equals to root of dimension of work divided by dimension of alpha. So here dimension of beta will be is equals to root of work will have the same dimension as energy. So this will be equal to ml square t power minus 2 divided by alpha, just we have calculated, m power minus 1 L power 0 t power 2. So this will be m power 2 root, that will be m, L square by L power 0 L square root L. This will be t power minus 4. T power minus 4 root will be t power minus 2. So this will be the dimension of alpha, ml t power minus 2. So if you compare, option B will be the correct option for the given question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, the coefficient of static friction between a wooden block and a mass 0.5 kilograms and a vertical rough wall is 0.2. Mu value is given as 0.2. The magnitude of horizontal force that should be applied on the block to keep it adhered to the wall will be in newtons. So here first let us consider the vertical wall. This is our vertical wall, and against this vertical wall we are pressing a wooden block. Mass of this wooden block is given as 0.5 kilograms, and the coefficient of friction between the block and the wall, mu value, is given as 0.2. Now here we are applying certain force to prevent it from going down. We have to calculate that force F. Now let us consider the free body diagram of this block. We are pressing with a force F, and there will be a normal reaction between this wall and the block. Let us take that normal reaction as N. Downward gravitational force will be acting mg, and friction force will try to prevent its motion in downward direction, F. This will be is equals to mu n. Let us consider this as our x-axis and this as our y-axis. body is in equilibrium now, means net force in any direction should be equal to 0. So if we consider the horizontal direction or x direction, the force equation can be written as the applied force F will be is equal to the normal reaction acting on the block. In y direction, vertically downward force mg will be is equal to the vertically upward force F. So here frictional force F will be is equals to mg. So here mu into n will be is equals to mg. Now substitute the known values here. Mu value is known as 0.2. N is F, the applied force which we have to calculate here. Mass of the block is 0.5 and G value is 10. So here this will be 5 by 0.2. This can be written as 1 by 5. 1 by 5 into F will be is equals to 5. So here F will be is equals to 25 Newton. This will be the solution for this question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is a resonance circuit having inductance and resistance 2 into 10 power minus 4 Henry and 6.28 ohms respectively oscillates at 10 megahertz. Here note this is a resonance circuit. The value of the quality factor is, in general, the formula for the quality factor is given as 1 by R into root L by C. Here we are given about L and R. We don't have any information about C. So let us eliminate this C. So what I am going to do is, I am going to multiply and divide this with L. Multiply and divide this with L. So this root L square can be written as L. So I am going to write it as L by R into 1 by root LC. We are given with a resonance circuit. In a resonance circuit, the angular frequency of the circuit is nothing but 1 upon root LC. So this is nothing but omega of the circuit. So this will be is equals to omega into L by R. Omega is nothing but 2 pi f. So we can write Q is equals to 2 pi f into L by R. All these values are known. Frequency is given, L value is given, R value is given. Just substitute it. 2 into pi. Pi value we can take it as 3.14. 3.14 into 2 will be 6.28. Into F is 10 megahertz. Means 10 into 10 power 6. 10 power 7 hertz. Into L value is given as 2 into 10 power minus 4. Divided by L value is given as 6.28. So 6.28 will get cancelled out. 10 power 7 into 10 power minus 4, that will be 10 power 3. So this is 1000 into 2. So quality factor of this circuit will be 2000. That will be the solution for this question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, a hydraulic press can lift 100 kilograms when a mass small m is placed on the smaller piston. It can lift dash kilograms when the diameter of the larger piston is increased by 4 times and the smaller piston is decreased by 4 times, keeping the same mass m on the smaller region. Let us see the initial case here. This is our hydraulic press with smaller region and larger region, small piston and large piston. Let us assume initial area of this small piston is small a and this large piston is capital A. Here we have kept a mass of 100 kilograms and here we have kept a mass of m kilograms. According to Pascal's law, we can say that the pressure at these 2 points has to be same. So mg by small a will be is equals to pressure created here 100 G by capital M. So here we can cancel out this G. So the small m can be written as 100 into small a upon capital M. Now in the second case, what is happening here? In second case, the diameter of the larger piston is increased by 4 times. Area will be directly proportional to diameter square. Pi d square by 4. So I can take it as directly proportional to diameter square. If diameter is becoming 4 times, then area will be becoming 16 times. Now I can say that the area of the large piston will change from A to 16A. Similarly, the smaller piston diameter is decreased by 4 times. If diameter is decreased by 4 times, area will be becoming 1 by 16 times. So small piston area will be changing from small a to a upon 16. Now let us assume here instead of 100 grams it is going to carry some x grams. Now the force equation can be written as mg upon area is now a by 16. So 16 will come here is equals to 100. Instead of 100 we are having x here. So this will be xg upon area has now become 16 capital A. Again g will get cancelled out. Now substitute the value of m from the first case. So here we can write 100 a by capital A into small a into 16 is equals to x by 16a. So small a will get cancelled out, capital A will get cancelled out. 16 into 16 will be 256. 256 into 100. So x will be is equals to 25600 kilograms. Basically it is 25,600 kilograms. That will be the solution for this question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is an inclined plane is bent in such a way that the vertical cross section is given by y is equal to x square upon 4, where y is in vertical and x is in horizontal directions. If the upper surface of this curved plane is rough with coefficient of friction mu is equals to 0.5, the maximum height in centimeters at which the stationary block will not slip downward is. See, at maximum height we can say that the block will be experiencing the maximum force, or it is limiting friction. Or we can also say that slope of the curve will be equal to slope of the curve will be equal to mu, or this will be is equals to tan theta r. Theta r is angle of repose. So slope of the curve has to be mu at the maximum height. We can say y is equals to x square by 4. Differentiating this, we can write dy by dx, which is slope, is equals to 2x upon 4. So this will be x by 2. Slope at any point is x by 2. If this is equals to mu, then x by 2 will be is equals to 0.5. So from here we can write x is equals to 1 meter. So here we can say y is equals to x square by 4. Just substitute the value of x here. This will be 1 square upon 4, that will be 0.25 meters. We want the solution in centimeter. 0.25 meter will be 25 centimeter. Just for the feel, I am drawing the diagram here. This is our given curve, parabolic curve, y is equal to x square upon 4. When the block is at its maximum height, it will be just about to slip. So here when we draw a tangent to the graph, this theta will be equal to angle of repose theta r, or the slope will be is equals to tan theta r, which is nothing but the coefficient of friction mu. So 25 will be the correct solution for this question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is an electromagnetic wave of frequency 5 GHz is traveling in a medium whose relative electric permittivity and relative permeability both are 2, means epsilon r and mu r both are equal to 2. What is the velocity of the medium? Is something into 10 power 7, we have to find this value. So generally velocity of electromagnetic wave in any medium is given as 1 upon root of mu into epsilon. Mu can be written as mu r into mu naught, relative permeability into mu naught. So this can be written as mu naught into mu r. Similarly, epsilon can be written as epsilon naught into epsilon r. So here I am separating this. This can be separated and written as mu r into epsilon r into 1 upon root of mu naught into epsilon naught. Mu naught and epsilon naught are electric permittivity and absolute permeability in free space. So this 1 by root mu naught into epsilon naught is nothing but velocity of the electromagnetic waves in free space, that is c. C value is nothing but 3 into 10 power 8. Now just substitute this value. This total value is 3 into 10 power 8. Relative permittivity and permeability are given as 2. So this is 2 into 2. So this is 3 by 2 into 10 power 8. We want it in terms of 10 power 7. So I am writing it as 10 into 10 power 7. This will be 5 times. So this is 3 into 5, 15 into 10 power 7 meters per second. So that unknown value given in the question will be 15. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, in connection with the circuit drawn below, the value of current through the 2 kilo ohm resistance is dash. So if you see the 2 kilo ohm resistance here, it is connected in parallel to this Zener diode, which is in reverse bias condition. And it is given that the voltage drop across the Zener diode will be 5 volts. Means whatever may be the applied voltage here, there is going to be a drop of 5 volts across this Zener diode. As this 2 kilo ohm is parallel to the Zener diode, we can also say that the voltage drop across this Zener diode will be 5 volts. So here if I apply the Ohm's law, the current through the 2 kilo ohm will be is equals to V by R, that is 5 upon 2000, 2 kilo ohm. Let us multiply this with 5 and this with 5. So this will be 25 upon 10,000, that is 10 power minus 4. So the unknown value here will be is equals to 25. This will be the solution for this question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, an audio signal Vm is equals to 20 sine 2 pi into 1500 t. Amplitude modulates a carrier Vc is equals to 80 sine 2 pi into 1 lakh t. Frequency is very high for carrier wave in general. The value of the percentage modulation is. The percentage modulation is given as the amplitude of the modulated wave, which is generally written as Am, divided by amplitude of carrier wave into 100. Here this wave is getting amplitude or Am. So Am will be 20 here and AC, carrier wave amplitude, will be 80. Just substitute the values here. So this will be 20 upon 80 into 100. So this will be 4 times, this will be 25 times. So percentage of modulation in this case will be 25%. This will be the solution for this question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given here is, a ball with a speed of 9 meters per second collides with another identical ball at rest. After the collision, the direction of each ball makes an angle 30 degrees with the original direction. The ratio of velocity of balls after the collision is x is to y, then what will be the value of x? So here let us assume two identical balls. One is at rest and other is moving with a speed of 9 meters per second. After collision, this is the original direction of the motion of first ball. Now each ball is making 30 degrees with the original direction. So let us assume this is first ball and this is second ball. This is first ball and this is second ball. Both are making an angle 30 degrees with the original direction. Let us assume the velocity of the first ball after collision is v1 and velocity of the second ball after collision is v2. And for reference, let us take this as x direction and this as y direction. Now take the component of each ball in y direction. If this is 30 degrees, component along x direction will be v1 cos 30 and along y direction will be v1 sin 30. This is along positive direction, so I am taking it as plus. Similarly, its component along y direction will be v2 sin 30 along minus y direction, so I am taking it as minus. sin 30. There is no external force acting on the system, so linear momentum will remain conserved. If linear momentum is going to remain conserved, in y direction I can write initial momentum in y direction will be equal to final momentum in y direction. Initially there is no movement in y direction. First ball is moving in x direction and second is at rest. So I can say initial momentum in y direction will be equal to 0. Now let us see about momentum after collision. This ball is having a velocity component in positive y direction. So first ball momentum in y direction can be written as, let us assume mass of each ball is m, as they are identical, both balls will have a mass of m. So first one linear momentum component along y direction will be mv1 sin 30 degrees positive. Similarly, negative component of the second ball will be minus mv2 sin 30. From this we can write mv1 sin 30 will be is equals to mv2 sin 30. Here sin 30m we can cancel out, means v1 is equals to v2. So v1 by v2 will be is equals to 1 is to 1. So here x and y both are equals to 1. We want to find out x, its value will be 1. That will be the solution for this question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, a common transistor radio setup requires 12 volt for its operation. The DC source is constructed by using a transformer and a rectifier circuit, which is operated at 220 volts AC on a standard domestic AC supply. The number of turns in the secondary coil are 24, the number of turns in the primary coil will be. So here we want an output of 12, for which we are going to use an input of 220 volts. The number of coils in secondary coil is given, we have to find the number of turns in primary coil. So let me write down this. The output, which is V in secondary coil, is given as 12 volts. The input, V primary, is given as 220 volts. Next, number of turns in secondary coil, NS, is given as 24. Now we have to find the number of turns in primary coil. Let us take this as X. We know that in a transformer, the ratio of the voltages will be equal to the ratio of number of turns, will be inversely proportional to ratio of current. Let me write down. Vs upon Vp will be is equal to Ns upon Np, which will be is equals to Ip upon Is. Current will be in reverse ratio and turns will be in the same ratio. So let us take this term. Vs upon Vp is equal to Ns upon Np. So here Vs is given as 12, and Vp is given as 220, Ns is given as 24, and now we have to calculate X. So here if you see, this will be 2 times. So X will be 2 into 220, which will be 440 turns. So number of turns in the primary coil will be 440. This will be the solution for this question. Thank you. Hello everyone. The question given is, an unpolarized light is incident on a polarizer of a polarizing experiment, and the intensity of the light emerging from the analyzer is measured to be 100 lumens. Now if the analyzer is rotated about the horizontal axis, which is direction of light, by 30 degrees in clockwise direction, the intensity of the emerging light will be dash lumens. So here in a polarizing experiment, we know that there will be two polarizers, one polarizer and one analyzer. Let us name it as P and A. Initially, axes of polarizer and analyzer are parallel to each other. Now an unpolarized light is incident on the polarizer. When an unpolarized light is incident on polarizer, it will get polarized and its intensity will become half. So let us assume that the initial intensity of unpolarized light is I0. So the intensity after passing through polarizer will be I0 by 2. Now these two axes are parallel, so when light again passes through analyzer, it will be unaffected. So again the intensity of the light coming out will be remaining same, which is I0 by 2. According to the question, after the analyzer, the intensity is measured to be 100 lumen. So I naught by 2 will be is equal to 100 lumen, or we can say I naught, the intensity of the unpolarized light, is 200 lumens. Now in second case, observe what is happening. We are going to rotate the analyzer by an angle 30 degrees. So polarizer is going to remain the same. This is going to remain same. Now the analyzer is going to be rotated by an angle 30 degrees in clockwise direction. So if this is the vertical, we have rotated by an angle 30 degrees in clockwise direction. This is our polarizer, this is our analyzer. Now see what will happen. Here the intensity of the unpolarized light is I naught. After passing through polarizer, it will get polarized and its intensity will become half. And now we are going through one more polarizer, which is generally called as analyzer. An angle between the vibration of light and the angle between the vibration of light and the axis of the analyzer is 30 degrees. So according to Malu's law, the intensity will be is equals to initial intensity into cos square theta. So here the intensity, final intensity will be is equals to initial intensity. Initial intensity means the intensity of the light falling on the analyzer, which is I naught by 2. So this will be I naught by 2 into cos square theta. Here theta is given as 30 degrees. So cos square 30 degrees. I naught by 2 is nothing but 100. Substitute it here. So 100 into cos square 30. Cos 30 is root 3 by 2. So this will be 3 by 4. So this will be 25 times 25 into 3. That will be 75 lumens. So this will be the final answer for this question. Thank you.